Coming up on Theater Talk, Scott Brown, who's making waves as the fairly new drama critic for New York Magazine, writes excellent reviews. You were here once before with a musical you wrote.
Right. A few years ago with Gutenberg musical.
Is the future of criticism so exciting that you decided to get out of writing musicals and get into writing about them?
I wanted to be part of a growth industry. That was the idea.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation. From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm producer Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
So, Michael, we have the critics in to discuss the season so far.
Yes, the critics are affectionately known in New York as the Wrecking Crew because of their destructive powers to kill and hurt and wound a lot of shows. They've closed many this season, but we're going to discuss the ones that have withstood the critical onslaught with our good friends tonight, David Richardson of WR Radio. Did Hugh Jackman hit you in the ear, Dave? What's going on?
That's exactly what happened.
You're the only person who didn't like his show, and he boxed your ear.
Actually, it was an unhappy audience member.
We'll get into that in a
I
moment.
had fallen asleep.
And Scott Brown, who's making waves as the fairly new drama critic for New York Magazine, writes excellent reviews, insightful, funny, and he's making a second appearance on Theater Talk because you were here once before with a musical you wrote.
Right. A few years ago with Gutenberg musical.
Right. So tell me, why would you? I mean, is the future of criticism so exciting that you decided to get out of writing musicals and get into writing about them?
I wanted to be part of a growth industry. That was the idea.
That's right.
I wanted to get out of one growth industry,
And
off
move
Broadway theater, and into
into
even
drama
more
criticism.
Wow.
Always happy to see my my dear friend and my colleague at the Post, Elisabeth Vincentelli. Welcome back to Theater Talk.
Hello, hello.
My line on Smash. And our old friend, Jacques of CBS Radio. Old friend. All right, welcome all to Theater Talk. Now, the most controversial show this season has been the revival of Porgy and Bess, now known as the Gershwins' Porgy and Bess, which recently opened on Broadway. And it was controversial because Stephen Sondheim attacked this kind of rewriting of the show. Elisabeth, you've seen it now. Do you think Sondheim's criticisms of tampering with a masterpiece were valid?
I think he was more attacking the way they were talking about their projects for it, rather than what they actually did, which, after seeing the show now, seems very mild. Seems like a tempest in a teapot type thing. I didn't care for the show, but that has nothing to do with what Sondheim thinks or may have felt. I think it is a very timid production, and I almost wish they had done more. Like, they really had gone at it and had been more forceful with it. I'm probably the only person in town who's not crazy about the leads, Norm Lewis and Audra McDonald. I find them just incredibly boring. There's no grit there. There's no. There's a lot of acting, a lot of really big acting. I'm acting this poor person from the South, and
and there's no scenery, I gather.
There's it's completely
There is
tedious.
nothing but a blue sheet.
They saved the blue sheet for Act 2.
Right.
That's the big reveal.
Yeah,
Act 2, blue sheet.
At the end, the whole thing goes up. Why, I don't know. The entire stage.
Oh, I like that. I gotta say, I like that quite a bit.
Can you defend this production, Scott?
No, I would defend this production. I don't know. I mean, I have no precedent, here. I haven't seen another production of Porgy and Bess. I mean, I know.
Who has?
I know. Well, exactly. I know. Well, exactly. There are people who have, and but I mean, I'm coming at it from a completely goatless perspective. I mean, I know one of the things that Sondheim said right up. It was like, no, you can't get rid of the goat cart. The goat cart is just
Key
crucial
to the symbolism.
the symbolism and the iconography of the whole production. And I can't say I missed that very much. I mean, I agree. It is acting. It is almost English pantomime. You feel an audience pulled along. It's almost like it's children's theater. At the end, the villain comes out and is booed and hissed. I love that. I thought that was great. I'm not asking I'm not asking social complexity of this.
I tell you, I didn't like the set. I didn't like the choreography. I didn't like the direction, and I thought it was fabulous. I had a wonderful time at the theater just because it's such a powerful work.
I did.
Do you want to put in a
I
word for
couldn't
the
help
score
it.
here? I mean, these Gershwin guys, they've got some
They wrote a
talent.
few
I thought all the stuff was wonderful to hear again.
Right.
You missed it
Way
in
back.
36, huh? Yeah.
No, wait a minute now. I was born the day the show first opened. We checked it in the book. Anyway,
Can't help loving that Dave of mine.
So how did the show measure up to the day you were born? If you had to compare
really
the
well.
two.
It worked out about as well as me.
But you
No,
liked it.
I did like the show. I liked it a lot. And I'll repeat that. I don't know how you can have a Broadway show, and I wrote this very clearly, or said it, how can you have a Broadway show without scenery, without a stage prop except a pump that worked once? I mean, that is ridiculous.
Well, is this minimalism or is this cheap?
I don't care what it
cheapness?
is, it's cheapness.
I think it's minimal. I think it's very
whatever.
much on purpose. And I personally actually don't mind that approach in general. I think a lot of Broadway sets are way too much. They're overstuffed, like they're putting so much money in, it's ridiculous. In this case, I don't think it works.
Now, something else that does have a set, but also a closing notice, it's closing very quickly, is On a Clear Day You Can See Forever, which is, I would argue,
That has a set?
the biggest fiasco of the season. Jacques with Harry Connick Jr., who was wonderful in the pajama game, but this time around he flops.
It was amazing. He glowed in the pajama game, and in this thing he looks so sad and forlorn. But you know, he winds up dancing with this guy who was once a woman in the original version, and you can tell that he's not too happy to have to do that. and in fact, he's not too happy to be singing the whole thing and to be
in there at
to
all.
be in the show.
We should say that this revival of On a Clear Day You Can See Forever was reimagined by the director Michael Mayer.
Who's usually a brilliant director, usually
Right.
does everything
But it's been
well.
given a
Well, the problem is that it was an interesting idea, I mean, but it creates some logical problems that they can't solve.
like a story that you can follow.
As in, there's so many plot holes that they become really distracting. And I think it's actually okay. Sometimes you can, you just forget about that stuff. If it works, you can. I mean, musicals are not the most logical. They don't make sense.
Right.
So many of
And
them.
On a
It's
Clear Day
Fine.
never did. I mean, it was written by
It's
Alan J.
fine, but
Lerner,
in
and he
this
was
case-
high on drugs, and it's about
Right.
reincarnation and ESP. It's
But here they
Yeah.
defy
But-
you to understand it.
But the problem here is that there's so many scenes where but this shouldn't be happening, and it becomes really distracting. It takes you out of the show.
It's about a multiple personality person, but also who bridges historical periods. So
But also he keeps turning in from a skinny homosexual man into a big-breasted woman. And Harry Connick Jr.
which
isn't
is when
reacting to
Harry
anybody.
Connick. Well, yes, he is. He likes it when she's big and buxom, but half the time,
well, he's
she's a
getting
man.
pretty big and buxom these days too, Harry Connick. Scott, you want to make a point?
It's hard to tell how big or not big Harry Connick Jr. is because he's been costumed in the suit. The suit
One
that William
suit.
Howard Taft was buried in. It looks like he is wearing a Frigidaire. It's like, I mean, I don't understand that. But that suit to me is actually just emblematic of everything that's wrong with the show. I mean, they started out with what I consider to be an interesting choice. I mean, I would disagree that the whole thing is too convoluted. I think it's a weird show. It was a broken show from the beginning. Why not take those parts, repurpose them for something bizarre? Probably do it off Broadway. I mean, the biggest problem is that a concept like this really can't be supported in a house that big, on a business model the size of a Broadway business model with a star like Harry Connick Jr. This is really the kind of thing that needs to happen at a chamber musical scale. And I think there were a lot of interesting ideas there, and they ran from all of them. They made some really bold choices about gender and sex and attraction and
ran away, yeah.
And then they ran away from them immediately.
I
And
think
the show is just
I think that's
oozing with shame.
I think that's an interesting and a shrewd point because it's my understanding that Harry Connick Jr., as Jacques has picked up on, was a little hesitant about the whole gay subtext going on. So I think they ran from those things to get a star.
Right.
They got a star, and that was the most important thing, and therefore they had to pull back from bolder choices because the star was not comfortable doing all
Star
this.
should have read the script.
So, Dave, you
I
want
might, well, I can say it. I like the music. I think
it's
one of
beautiful.
the best
Beautiful
scores.
score.
Yeah.
Wonderful
Gorgeous, yeah.
songs.
This is an interesting topic, though. You have these great scores, Porgy and Bess, the Gershwins, of course, A Clear Day You Can See Forever, Burton Lane, Alan J. Lerner. But you have the sense that musicals can't be done the way they were written anymore, that they have to be revised. Everybody has to get in there and muck it up. And Stephen Sondheim's interesting point was these were classics, maybe not A Clear Day, but Porgy and Bess, these are classics, and don't mess with the classics. Accept them on the terms with which they were written. Is that a fair thing for creators to say, Scott?
Well, for creators to say, I don't know. I mean, first of all, the creators of those shows aren't around to defend them, and it's a good thing that they're not. I mean, because I think shows should evolve. I mean, I'm not an originalist, you know. I'm not the Antonin Scalia of Broadway. I really do think that really great art sort of grows and breathes with the time it's in.
But
I don't think that means that you recast everything with an eye towards dismantling the original. I mean, I think there's a very big difference between, you know, what Porgy is doing, which, as Elisabeth said, is not much. I mean, I really don't think they changed very little.
Yeah.
They may have originally intended to change. We'll never know what they were going to do, and we'll never know how
He
much
got him to back
Sondheim-
off.
Exactly. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's a good show, so they made the right choices. On A Clear Day is a different thing entirely. I mean, this is like, I mean, it was a box of parts that somebody was like, hey, you want this thing? You know, it doesn't work, but maybe you can get it.
Elisabeth, I want to ask you this, though. I mean, if nobody would go to, you know, a Picasso painting, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, and think, you know, we should add a few more brushstrokes here for this time. These are works of art. They were created by artists. Do you really think that you can go back and muck around with these things? Yeah.
Follies
and
work.
I think
Yeah. But Stephen Sondheim's still alive, and Stephen Sondheim would not allow, I mean, although he has rewritten Follies himself, but he will not allow people to, you know, let's take Losing My Mind out and
But at
put
the
in,
same time,
send in the clowns.
he's allowed the John Doyle to do Sweeney Todd.
It would run longer, but
But at the same time, we've seen a Sweeney Todd, you know, but by John Doyle on Broadway, that was a pretty radical take on the show.
Right.
So you can do that, and within. But actually, to go back to On a Clear Day, one of my big problems with it, other than the fact that there's all these logical issues with the plot, is that they took a show with a powerhouse role for a woman, and they turned it into a show with a kind of boring role for a guy. Did we need that? It's a great role for the original Daisy Melinda.
Barbara Harris.
Barbara Harris, who was
role, and Kristen
brilliant on the
Chenoweth
album.
did it at Encores a few years
Very
ago.
well,
She
yeah,
was
so-
terrific.
yeah, yeah.
That really bugs me on principle. You take a show
written for a woman, about a woman.
with a great part. Like, she has to do a lot. It's very funny. She has to, you know, switch between two personalities.
Right.
And now you have this completely boring character, male character who's taken over the show.
If Michael Mayer were doing
it's
Porgy and
beyond,
Bess, it would just be the Gershwins' Porgy, I think. The girl would
Porgy
be
and Crown.
Porgy and Crown.
Yeah,
I wanna
the
move-
subtext in Porgy
I want to
and
move
Crown.
on to some of the plays now. Jacques, one of our favorite writers, you and I have been a champion of hers for a long, long time, is Teresa Rebeck.
Yes.
Who has a new play called Seminar on Broadway, starring Alan Rickman as a kind of sadistic writing instructor who brutalizes his students. Did you like this play?
I liked it. I'm not sure it's the greatest thing she's ever written, but it holds up, and it's got some interesting conversations and some interesting acting, I think.
Do you like Alan Rickman in it?
Somewhat. I'm not a big Alan Rickman
Why?
fan. Because he's just very one note, in my opinion, which is surly.
Dave, your take on Seminar?
Well, it's funny. Well, stop talking about the Chinese girl either, Michael. No, I
should say
like
there's an very
There's an
attractive
Asian,
Asian woman
who
in
strips her breasts,
Yeah.
and that she's one day.
And
I know.
Dave,
That,
two
you know,
thumbs
I'm
up
one
from
of-
Dave.
Two thumbs
I'm
up.
one of those guys that goes to the theater that has a good time. Come on.
Whereas I'd
But they
forgotten
were
her
very,
entirely.
they
Oh,
were
I like
very small breasts, I might add.
You're terrible.
Moving on.
I liked the
minutes.
show. I like Rickman a great deal. Once again, I thought it just got more and terrible miswords. I mean, they're talking about. He's just sitting there. The script is terrific. You've read a half a page.
You read half a page.
And-
That probably
Well.
reflects Teresa Rebeck's Hollywood experience, because
Yes.
Hollywood people are
People are
known
very
for
fast.
reading a three-line
They
treatment.
don't read the script. They read what's called
But
coverage.
this is that's right, exactly. But this is a man who's charging $5,000 per student to really study their work, and he really just throws it off.
Scott, your take
Too
on
long.
Seminar?
Too long.
I have a little bit of a prejudice about, you know, stories that are writers writing about writing. I find that incredibly tedious, boring, and terrible. I don't. I mean, because writing is generally tedious, boring, and terrible. Right. I mean, like, you know, I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, we all remember Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, the Aaron Sorkin short-lived Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
That was scene after scene of people saying, "I'm trying to write. I'm writing something. I've written it," and somebody taking it and going,
It's
good.
Oh, it's good.
Well, usually because it was Sorkin, everything was very positive, and this feels like another version of that. Like I just feel like there's something so solipsistic and irritating about writers talking about who is a writer and who isn't a writer, and who can have a breakthrough and how. I mean, that play has no center. You're sitting there waiting for someone to become the main character of that play, and it never happens. And in the end, it turns out it's the Hamish Linklater character, and he is arguably the person you care least about. And it's kind of, and it's like, congratulations, you're a real writer. And now you get to study under Snape in potions class. I mean, like, I was like, really, all of this was leading up to anointing this guy. I mean, I think it's a very entertaining play. I think she's an extremely entertaining writer. I think she writes beat to beat really, really well. I just think that play is vacant.
This leads us into
See, actually,
Tiff.
can I just say something about it? I don't think the show is so much about writing as it is about getting published. And that's something different because you get more into the gamemanship and the kind of trafficking of influence, which I thought was fascinating, actually. I thought that was a really good, the power plays, the behind the scene action of, like, it's not really about writing. It's really about getting published and making it as a writer. And it's about ambition and manipulation.
And bearing your breasts.
Oh, let's not forget that. That's the most important part of writing.
I want to
But anyway,
I do want to talk about Teresa because, you know, full disclosure, she is a friend of mine, and I'm appearing on her new NBC TV series called
Then
Smash.
I hear you are fabulous.
I'm brilliant at it.
I'll take
Absolutely
that
brilliant.
check now.
But Elisabeth, you've had a sort of a public tiff with Teresa over what?
I would say it was more like a conversation or an exchange of diverging opinions via.
In other words, you're not going to be wearing the thing that Dave's got on his ear after you meet Teresa.
I don't know.
Today. Well, what was the crux of your debate?
Actually, it happens on my blog at the New York Post via the comment section. The crux was about basically the best strategy to improve women's visibility in theater. Like, how do we? The fact is, there's very few women playwrights on Broadway, for instance.
Yeah.
Teresa Rebeck is one of the very, very few of them.
Who gets produced
there's
regularly on
Yasmina
Broadway.
Reza. Yeah. There's.
What was the
Teresa
conflict between you? Did you not agree?
It's really in terms of, like, how best to try to change things. I think it's a divergence of opinion, not about the goal, which we agree on, but how to achieve it.
What did you?
What'd you disagree on?
Well, I think basically I thought she maybe relied a little too much on her own, a past experience of hers that was a negative experience, which didn't seem to have held back her career very much because she has a very successful career, much deservedly. And I thought it felt a little self-serving to me. But again, we agreed on the basic
I really
goal.
think I think there's a very simple solution to this. The best way for any playwright to get produced is to write a good play. Doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. If the play's good, there will be people who put it on Broadway.
I think that many people would argue with you on that one.
What?
What
Do you think if someone turns in a play because it's written by a woman, producers are going to say, "Oh, we don't want to put this on Broadway because it's by
Yes,
a woman."
statistical studies have been done.
Statistical studies, that's nonsense. Come on.
No.
Good play's a good play.
I think the problem is that very often people assume that that men in a play, what they talk about, what their concerns are universal. If it's women, it becomes women's issues. And that really bugs me.
I think that is
That really bugs me. Which we could talk about when we talk about Road to Mecca. We'll get to that.
Yes, well, we have time for one
Barbara
more.
Harris. 2 hour show.
I agree with
Nobody-
you so much in principle, and I'm going to
like-
disagree with you violently on Road to Mecca.
Get to Road to Mecca.
Road to Mecca, a play by that noted feminine playwright Avril Fugard, just opened up on Broadway.
Yes! Darkness! The darkness that nearly smothered my life in here.
Scott, you want to?
I think we're on the same page here, Scott. Take over.
Okay.
Chime in.
No, it's true.
All right, you're pushing me out front so Elizabeth can cut off my head. Right? And
Your ear.
My ear. That's true. Exactly. That's right. You're taking us piece by piece. That's what really happened back then.
That's right.
I'll see you after the show.
You totally Tysoned his ear back in the green room.
It was brutal.
Keep your shirt on, Elizabeth, after the show when you're with Dave. All right.
Went to the Roundabout Lounge last night. It was just
the Road to Mecca.
I felt like it was, it's a play about women that seemed to me to be written by a man who was trying to imagine what women talk about. That made it incredibly tedious from where I was sitting. I also don't understand how the production was conceived. It's an incredibly intimate, quiet play in the American Airlines Theater. It feels like it has just been like abandoned in a blimp hangar, and there's this, you know, and the set is like this massive. It looks like the set, which is supposed to be some shanty in the South African desert, looks like Shirley MacLaine's Crystal Studio in Santa Fe. I mean, it looks like a place where rich people's pottery classes are held. I mean, it's like there's golden light filtering through and all this other stuff. And like, so nothing made sense to me. The world of it, I just felt completely at sea. And then people are sort of having these elliptical conversations that I was really having trouble just finding a tether for. Yeah, I mean, it was a fight with unconsciousness for me.
Dave,
Rosemary Harris was not
way too long. Oh, let's sing her.
Dave, this is considered a contemporary classic.
I don't care what kind of classic it is. I didn't see the original. I knew nothing about it.
It was in a very small, intimate
But
theater that doesn't
I had
exist
to fight
anymore.
to stay awake. I got to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, especially in the first act. At least it got a little more action in the second act. We want to divulge that. And I like Jim Dale. But you're right
fault
about
of the
the set. I mean, Mecca. There's enough Meccas in the first act. I didn't know where we were going, but she's wonderful to see again. I mean,
Rosemary Harris.
I said Barbara Harris, Rosemary.
right.
I get my people confused. But it's great to see her again.
Elisabeth,
Now,
now,
Elisabeth,
this is a play about women, all
Okay.
the issues you think should be on Broadway, women talking with each other.
I agree with a lot of what's been said. The set is preposterous, but I think it has to do with the fact that the Roundabout made the stupid decision of putting this in the American Airlines instead of the Laura Pels, for instance, which would have been their off-Broadway house would have been a lot more appropriate.
Named after a bankrupt company.
And yes, the first act is incredibly long, but I think it's a show that rewards patience. It's a show that it goes counter to everything you assume about Broadway. It's a show. It's not about instant gratification. It rewards patience. It kind of like gets you to know these people very slowly. You kind of have to kind of let them come to you. And I think the second act is beautiful. It's a rare case of the second act being completely wonderful. And really, it all pays off in the second act. I think the acting is lovely. There's people who come from very different approaches and styles. Jim Dale, Rosemary Harris, and Carol Gugino. And it's also a play that it's about the friendship between two women, and they're not talking about men. They're not just complaining about which we see in every other rom-com or Hollywood movie. If you watch that, it's what people always talk about, I'd Atlanta guy, and are always kind of backstabbing each other. This is a very wonderful friendship between two very different women from two different generations. And that's what they talk about. And it's a show you kind of let it sink in. And it's actually the shading of the characters is very subtle because they change a lot. Something you think is true about one character turns out not to be true, and they're not all nice and cozy, and their agenda is not always clear, what they want, and sometimes they are wrong about what they think they should do, and I thought it was really lovely.
Jacques, you saw the original production. Did it have a big impact back then? I mean, it's one of the things that established Athol Fugard as a major force in theater.
I don't remember the discussions really, but I remember the intimacy and the smallness and the tightness of the thing.
We got to wrap it up. I just want to ask you guys, looking ahead the spring, any particular show that you are curious about, looking forward to?
I'm only looking forward to one show.
What?
Evita.
Why?
Because it's my favorite show of all times, of any show I ever saw, and it takes me back a long way.
Because I only go as far as my headlights can see, I am looking forward to Kevin Spacey and Richard III tonight. I haven't seen it yet. I'm seeing it tonight. I'm very excited.
Okay. Elisabeth, something that's on your screen?
I'm looking forward to seeing Once Again.
Really?
Once.
Which is
again.
Once, which is an off-Broadway musical based on the little movie, and it's transferring to Broadway.
Which I thought was terrific at New York Theatre Workshop. I'm very curious to see how that's going to play in a bigger house. Yeah. It's reopening in March. I think it's lovely. It doesn't have any stars. It's just got a great story and great songs and a great use of theater techniques to tell a story. I really hope it works. I think it could be a kind of, if you remember, people thought that Spring Awakening would be a stretch on Broadway, and it did really well. Yeah. it could be something similar. I think it's a lovely, there's no names in it, but it is such a wonderful, it's everything a musical should be.
Yeah.
you think
Jacques,
they're gonna-
something you're looking forward to?
Nothing I'm looking forward to. but
Intermission.
Intermission. But Other Desert Cities, which is still the best play
John
on
Robin
Broadway.
Bates' play.
Saw it last February. Saw it again recently. It's the best thing on.
And Elizabeth Marvel is coming back. She's replacing Rachel Griffith, so that'll be interesting.
And Stockard Channing is like, she's one of those people you want to see do anything.
All right. So we end on a high note with Other Desert Cities, still on Broadway.
Indeed.
Jacques Lesourd from CBS Radio, Elisabeth Vincentelli, my colleague at the New York Post, Scott Brown from New York Magazine, and Dave Richardson,
Well done.
the boxer from WOR Radio. Thank you all for being our guest tonight on Theater Talk.
I love you, Porgy. Hound dog steal my woman. You wanna stay with me? You wanna stay? You got a home now, honey, and you got love. So no more crying. Can't you understand? You're gonna go about your business singing, 'cause you got Porgy. You got your
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.